Today is World Water Day, and just to notify everyone, we will be recording this next 45 minutes, and we'll share the video with all of the teachers who've RSVP'd and with our general teacher audience. So this will be recorded. You can review it and watch it in the future. So we are celebrating World Water today right alongside the Ohio River at the Thomas More Biology Field Station. And if you don't know what World Water Day is, it is an international celebration. The United Nations started this quite a while ago, and it is important to celebrate water. The theme of this year's World Water Day is Water is Peace. And if you didn't know, around half of the humans in the world do not have access to clean, fresh water year-round. So about half of the people living in the world today experience severe water crises, at least for some portion of their year, which is crazy to think. That is not part of our lives here in the Ohio River Valley or Ohio River watershed. We are fortunate enough to have access to clean, healthy water, and that's not the experience that a lot of the rest of the world experiences, unfortunately. So that is something we should all celebrate and not take for granted. So at some point today, raise a glass of water and cheers everyone around you, because it is World Water Day, and we're very, very lucky to have such an important resource. We are 70% water, the human body. So we are water, right? A huge portion of our bodies is water. And if you live in this region, the greater Cincinnati area, which I think most of you do, that means you're walking around as the Ohio River. Your drinking water comes from the Ohio River, therefore you are the Ohio River. It's in all of our bodies. So we have endless reasons to take water, this water resource, seriously and to protect it. It's very personal, but we are not the only animal that relies on water. There are some incredible creatures that live right here in our community, in our watershed, and rely on access to clean and healthy water. And that's really what we want to talk to you mostly about today. Introduce you to two really cool species, freshwater mussels that live in our local watershed, and hellbender salamanders. So Molly and I will introduce you to some of those. You'll get up close views of them online, because we have some living specimens here in the lab at Thomas More. And then what we'll do for the last part of our 45 minutes together, we will host a career panel. And we have 4 awesome panelists, scientists and with conservation backgrounds, folks who work in a lot of different fields in conservation science, and they're going to answer questions that you might have. So they'll share a little bit about their jobs, and then we will accept questions, and you can learn a little bit about what it means to be involved in conservation science and maybe even water quality. So that is the plan for the day. And before I toss it over to Molly, I'll just mention, I work for the Ohio River Foundation. We are a nonprofit, about 23 years old. We've been around for a while here in the watershed of the Ohio River, and we are all about protecting and restoring the mighty Ohio River, but also the watershed. And that means, if you're unfamiliar, we'll probably reference this word several times throughout the next few minutes. Watershed is the Ohio River is the heart of our watershed. So every drop of water that falls across the landscape eventually in some way makes it to the low point, the Ohio River. So everything we do on the land, all the small tributaries that contribute to the Ohio River that run through our backyards, our schoolyards, all across the landscape, has an impact on our watershed. So that is what the Ohio River Foundation seeks to do, is protect and preserve and restore the Ohio River watershed. So I'll kick it over to Molly, and we'll get started on the next chapter.
Perfect. Well, again, I'm Molly. Thank you all so much for joining us today. So we're coming to you live from the Thomas More University Biology Field Station. So biology field stations are centers of research, education, and outreach, and they often take a conservation theme. And most often, field stations kind of take on the flavor of the natural environment that they are embedded in. So as you might be able to guess, the Thomas More University Field Station, we're located right on the Ohio River. So we're all about big rivers, freshwater animals, drinking water and water quality, and everything else you can imagine that goes along with those. So right now we find ourselves in our water quality lab, where we have a lot of equipment storage, data entry, and where we use a lot of our water quality equipment. So like Melinda said, if you live anywhere near the Ohio River or the greater Cincinnati area, you receive your drinking water from the Ohio River. So of course, there's a lot of treatment that goes into it before it comes to your house, but we are one of the teams that are helping to monitor the water to make sure it's clean and free of pollution, and we help detect spills when they come along. But welcome. So I'll take the camera and show you around the rest of the lab, where I'll get to introduce you to our hellbenders. So this is our water quality lab. And now we are entering the main lobby of our laboratory. So right over here, we have the Ohio River. And the cool thing about this facility is it used to be what's called a lock and dam. So the big building we're in now is the former lock house, where the dam workers controlled the passage of boats. And here you can see the historical dam that was at our site. And today the lock house is renovated as our laboratory building. So we have a mural honoring a lot of the native freshwater fish species. And we are going to head down the stairs into our laboratories. So on the left is our hellbender lab. This lab was initially constructed to be used as a satellite lab for the US EPA. So if you've ever heard of medical studies using white mice, in aquatic ecology, we use something called fathead minnows to test for aquatic toxicants. So here's Melinda. She's going to show you our hellbenders. I'll get more into the history a bit later. But this is Norm. So eastern hellbenders are incredibly unique species. They are North America's largest amphibian. They can grow nearly up to 3 feet long and 5 pounds. And as you can see, they're quite athletic and active. And they are incredibly threatened species. So hellbenders are very sensitive to pollution. When they hatch, they have gills that they use to help them breathe for the first 2 years of their lives. But past 2 years of age, they breathe exclusively cutaneously, meaning through their skin. So because of this, they require extremely high levels of dissolved oxygen. They can't just come to the surface to take a breath when they need to. They have to absorb their oxygen through their skin. So because of this, a lot of what we do on land within our watershed is affecting the hellbenders. You can see he does not want to be held. They're not used to humans, even when they are in captivity. But some of the things that can impact dissolved oxygen in streams where they live are due to human impact. So one example of that is when we're building a city, we might remove the trees right by the shore of a stream, right? So those trees and shrubs right along the stream's bank are called riparian vegetation because they're in the riparian zone. So when we remove those trees and shrubs, we're removing the stream's natural buffer. So then when it rains on land and it brings fertilizers and pesticides and tire chemicals through the watershed, it's all draining downhill into the streams where these guys live. When there are no trees and shrubs to help draw those chemicals and nutrients in, they just go straight into the streams, right? So these guys are breathing through their skin, they're absorbing oxygen, and they're also absorbing harmful things as well. Additionally, when you remove the trees and shrubs right near the bank of a river, you're exposing that stream to sunlight, right? Normally a small stream with trees around it, it's almost totally covered in shade. But when you're removing those plants, the stream is no longer covered in shade, so it's exposed to sun, water temperatures are rising. So in warmer streams, oxygen goes down. So the warmer the water, the less oxygen can dissolve into it. So like I said, these guys are pretty threatened for a few reasons. They're also affected by sedimentation, which means a lot of dirt basically coming into their streams, and that can happen for the same reasons of removing that riparian vegetation. And these guys lay their eggs in the cracks between different rocks. So when that stream is filling with lots of sediment, they're kind of losing that natural habitat they need to reproduce. So researchers like us are working on a lot of different projects to be able to help these populations thrive in their native regions. So one thing we hope to do someday, and what a lot of researchers are doing already, is something called a Head Start program, where we obtain eggs and or juvenile hellbenders from the wild, and we raise them up to breeding age, and then we re-release them at that time. Because if you think of the probability of a single hellbender
hellbender egg, making it to reproductive age, the chances of that are so low. Hellbender eggs are very vulnerable. Male hellbenders eat their young, turtles eat hellbender eggs, fish eat hellbender eggs. So we're doing everything in our power to help them grow up to be old enough to reproduce. So we have Norm here. We've had him since 2015. And that tank covered right now, we have Spot and Ebony. And then we also have a hellbender named Bird Boy. And what's funny about hellbenders is they all have their own personalities. So we feed them diets of minnows and crayfish. Some of the hellbenders prefer bigger minnows. Some of them prefer crayfish. And like I said, we've had them since 2015. So we've had them since they were just a few inches long. And by this point, they've reached breeding age. Hellbenders do not tend to breed successfully in captivity. So right now, what we're doing is we're just focusing on mastering hellbender husbandry. So husbandry means the managed care of animals. So for them, we just are making sure they're getting a balanced and diverse diet. They're getting plenty of enrichment. They have habitat that's suitable to them. As you can see in their tank, we have gravel. Hellbenders love to live in coarse substrate. And then if you think about how to have animals in managed care systems, there's a lot of bells and whistles that go into making a suitable habitat for them. If you think about the Ohio River, there's thousands of factors that are determining the water chemistry, right? You have aquatic plants producing oxygen, you have bacteria breaking down waste. You can't just fill a tank with sink water and expect your animals to live happy lives. So what we do here is we have lots of different types of filtration that help maintain the correct water chemistry of our hellbender tanks. So over here, we have bio towers filled with bio balls. These provide surface area for beneficial bacteria to grow. So water flows through their tanks, through these filters where the bacteria are breaking down waste products. And then back there, we have what's called a sand filter. So that is a physical method of filtration. So any physical debris like excess food gets caught in there before returning through the rest of the system. And then over there, you see that little blue bulb right here. This is a UV bulb. So this is going to zap any bacteria that makes it through the water. And then over here, you can see the edge of our snapping turtle. His name is Snappy, as you might imagine. And yeah, thank you for joining in the Hellbender Lab. And I'm going to hand this off to Melinda, who's going to tell you a lot about freshwater mussels.
Thank you so much, Molly. All right, very cool. We are going to move on over to the other side, the mussel lab. We are entering that right now. And this is where we will bring some mussels out and show you yet another really cool and amazing species that lives throughout the Ohio River watershed. And I'm going to share some more information with you about the freshwater mussel. So there are many reasons to care about them, but I'm going to guess many of you aren't familiar. Here's one. Aren't familiar with what a freshwater mussel is. And maybe if you are, maybe you don't think they're that cool, but by the end of this quick tour of our mussel lab, I hope you think a little differently about them, because they are really amazing creatures. Not only they are amazing in their physical and behavioral adaptations, but they also provide some pretty incredible environmental services to us and everything that relies on clean water. So Molly spent some time sharing about how they provide the healthiest and cleanest water through the different filtration systems. But if you didn't know this about the freshwater mussel, it is a filter feeder. So there's another neat example of a freshwater mussel. This is a kidney shell mussel. They are filter feeders. So mussels live, they're aquatic animals. They live in rivers, streams, creeks, sometimes ponds, but throughout the watershed, you can find them living in our waterways. And mussels don't get around very much. They, as you can see from their bodies, they don't have feet. They're not highly mobile animals at all. So they might live their entire life in 1 square meter, maybe the size of the lab table you're sitting at right now. They won't leave that space. So they are where they are, which means they have to get everything that they need in order to survive from the water. So as they filter through incoming or incurrent siphons on their body, that's where they get all of their nutrients and the dissolved oxygen. They have gills to breathe oxygen. That's where they get it all. They suck it all in through an incurrent siphon. So their siphons are kind of like 2 straws that they will expose as they very slightly open their shell, and they suck in water and nutrients and oxygen, and they spit out perfectly crystal clear water. They're like little Brita filters, mussels. So they're hoping to find in the water things like bacteria, maybe good bacteria that they eat, mainly algae, diatoms, things like that. That's the kind of natural stuff that exists in a body of water that they're hoping to find and that they'll feed off of and that will sustain them. But also, there are often things in the water that aren't supposed to be there or in harmful quantities. So mussels, because they can't escape something like that, they're not highly mobile. They have to deal with what is happening in the conditions they're living in. So, and here's another example of a beautiful, huge washboard mussel. I like to call her Big Bertha, as she's a beautiful mussel. But this is how big they can get. They come in all different shapes and sizes. And there's a lot of diversity of species, which I'll share a little bit more about just how important all the diversity happening in our region is when it comes to freshwater mussels. But these mussels are filter feeders, so they remove harmful things from the water as well. And what's amazing about freshwater mussels is a mussel can filter up to 10, and maybe a mussel of this size, 20 gallons of water an hour. So that may seem inconsequential if you're standing over the Ohio River and you look at how big that body of water is. But if you think back to how many mussels used to exist on the Ohio River and in the tributaries of the Ohio River, there were hundreds of thousands of mussels just in one river mile. And that was all up and down the Ohio River. Imagine what kind of power and filtration they were able to achieve when they existed in their historical numbers. So their ability to filter feed is incredible. And that's an important environmental service to everything, humans and creatures, that rely on freshwater mussels. But unfortunately, as I kind of alluded to, our modern populations of mussels are not what they used to be. So we live in a region in the Ohio River Valley and the Ohio River watershed that is home to a lot of mussel diversity. So this is some local pride we should all really, really take seriously and talk up, that we in this region, in the Ohio River watershed, have 127 of the 297 species found in North America. So we have a lot of biological diversity when it comes to freshwater mussels right here in our own backyard. And that is super special. That doesn't exist in the world or in a lot of areas in North America. But what is unfortunate is that 70% of those mussels that have historically been found in our watershed are now either threatened, endangered, or already extinct. So there are a lot of challenges that mussels face, and there's a lot of work we need to do to ensure we don't lose any more of these awesome animals, because they do provide an important environmental service, like I said, as filter feeders. They're powerful cleaners of the water, but they also have an amazing intrinsic value. They're just cool creatures. They might not look that interesting from the outside. They have great camouflage, right? They look like rocks. Probably something that a predator would easily overlook, unless you're a river otter. That is the #1 predator for a freshwater mussel. But beyond what you see, there's a lot going on with freshwater mussels. So one of my favorite fun facts about freshwater mussels is their incredible reproductive cycle. And so you right here in this basket that Sarah's showing, you can see the mussel diversity. We have pink hill splitters, mucket, kidney shell. There's a couple different species represented here. And what's really cool is each species has a slightly different strategy when it comes to their reproductive cycle. And I'll share a quick story of what that looks like, because it might blow your mind a little. So freshwater mussels aren't getting around very much, right? They rely on flow in order for a male and the female to gain access to sperm or mussel gametes. But what happens next is what's incredible. So hopefully a female mussel is hanging out in the river. And Sarah, if you want to pick up another one, we can just use this as an example. So a mussel like this, three-ridge mussel, for example, she'll be hanging out in the river, hoping that she'll come in contact with some male three-ridge gametes, and she'll take those in through her in-current siphon. and that will allow her to create maybe thousands of baby larvae inside of her body. But this is where the story gets crazy and complicated, because what is that female mussel going to do with thousands of baby larvae, or what we call glochidia? She has to get quite creative. And so what a female mussel does is she has to find the perfect babysitter. So different species do this differently, but a mussel like the plain pocketbook will actually open up her shell slightly, and she will exhibit a part of her soft inner body called the mantle. And if you want to hold up that picture there, Sarah, what's amazing is she has adapted to that part of her body to look like what else but a tiny little fish. And that is part of her body. We call that a lure. And that lure is so perfectly adapted to look like a little fish. It has eye spots, dorsal fins, caudal fins, tail fins, and she'll flick that little tiny lure and it becomes alive. And as you can see from this picture, you can imagine that that would easily fool a predatory fish, like say a bass that's swimming around in that river. And that bass will come over up to the female mussel, try to eat that little lure part of her body. The female mussel senses that, and she clamps down or releases into that fish's face, that bass fish, a cloud of her baby glochidia or larva. And what's amazing is those little larvae then are sucked in through that bass fish's gills. It attaches to the fish's gills, and that's where those little baby larvae will hang out for maybe a month or more, or several months. They'll gain important nutrients from the fish, oxygen that's being absorbed through the fish's gills, and it's a safe place for them to grow to a size in which they're large enough that they will release from the fish's gills and fall to the bottom of the river and carry out the rest of their lives. So isn't that just an incredible story? I would encourage you, if you have time, look up a video of mussel lures and just watch how amazing these are. And all these different species of mussels you've seen today, they each have a slightly different lure and a slightly different strategy. Some of them look more like larvae, some look like fish, but there's all kinds of creative ways that these female mussels have adapted to ensure that they have good success in their larvae and mussels. So that's just one other reason we should care about freshwater mussels. I'm going to take a step down and show you the lab. They are an important, really important animal for the environmental service they provide, but they're also just amazing and they're cool. And there is a lot of that we need to do in order to help ensure that we don't lose any more mussels. And that involves all kinds of behaviors that we do at our school, we do at home. So we challenge you all today on World Water Day to think about what you might be able to do in your day-to-day life to ensure that mussels have the appropriate habitat, that they have access to clean and healthy water. And one thing that we probably all have in our lives, either at school or maybe at home, is a grass lawn. And as Molly explained earlier, there's a lot of things that go into ensuring that we have a healthy riparian zone and healthy habitats in our watershed. And grass lawn, unfortunately, is probably, it's better than pavement for sure when it comes to protecting our waterways and what runs off into our waterways. But grass lawn isn't the best at slowing down water, or absorbing nutrients. So I challenge you all to think about, are there small ways in your life at home, at work, at school, that you could reduce the amount of grass lawn and maybe plant more native plants that would protect and benefit our watershed and therefore protect and benefit freshwater mussels. So think about things that you could do in order to ensure we don't lose any more mussels. But that is the amazing and cool freshwater mussel. I hope you think about them a little differently, appreciate them a little more. And next, we are going to head back upstairs. We're going to sit down with our career panel and hopefully get some good questions from you all to them. So let's go ahead and do that.
All right, we'll see you soon.
All right, so now we are here with our panel of amazing volunteers. They have given us some time today and given you some time today out of their busy schedules to sit with you. We're first going to go down the line and have each of them introduce themselves. If you wouldn't mind sharing your name, who you work for, what you do, and maybe how many years you've been doing it. And then students and our audience, that's when we'll go ahead and open up the panel to any questions that you may have for them. So start thinking about questions you have, and we'll go ahead and get started. Sarah, do you want to kick us off and introduce yourself?
Sure, yes. I'm Sarah Brands, and I work for the Ohio River Foundation. I am the donor relations and volunteer manager there, and this is my 14th year with the organization.
Hi, I'm Leslie Sneed. I'm with Kentucky Resources Council, which is a nonprofit environmental law firm. I've been working with them for about a year. But previous to that, I worked with freshwater mussels in one way or another, sometimes working for the state government, but also working for independent contractors. And I've been doing that for about 10 years.
Hi, my name is Nate Shoes. I'm the curator of mollusks and crustaceans at the State Museum of Ohio. It's at the Ohio State University. It's called the Museum of Biological Diversity. You might wonder what a curator at a natural history museum does. It's kind of a rare job. I basically manage the state's collection of freshwater mussels, land and freshwater snails, and mostly crayfish is the crustacean collection. It functions sort of as a library of scientific specimens. I've been doing that for about 3 years now, and I've been working with mollusks in some capacity for about a decade.
Hi, my name is Liz Fett. I work for the Sanitation District of #1 of Northern Kentucky, which is a regional wastewater and stormwater utility. We're fairly unique in that we have a big monitoring program. And I have been there now, this will be my 12th year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here today. So just to review how we'll handle questions, if there's any questions from our audience, what we'd love for you to do is on the reactions button on Zoom, there should be a raise hand function. If any of your students or teachers would like to ask a question directly of our panel members, we'd love for those to come through live. So just raise your hand, or you can type your question into the chat and we'll read it to the panel members. While students, you're thinking about any questions you may have, I'm going to ask the panelists a quick question, but we'd love to hear from any of you if you're interested. Okay, good. Good. There's a hand up. Well, let's go ahead and go to Henry County High School. If you want to go ahead and get ready to ask your question, we're going to unmute you right now. And you can go ahead and you're unmuted. Henry County, you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Did they put it in the chat?
Oh, yeah, looks like they did. That's great. So I'll read the question here to you. Students are wondering about raising and releasing mussels similar to the hellbender. That's an awesome question, and I'll let the panel answer that one.
I'm gonna defer to him.
Yeah, so this is really, it's a shame that, I have a colleague, Dr. Eva Rosner, who's the director of the Ohio State University's Waters Aquatic Conservation Center, which is run in collaboration with the Columbus Zoo. And so we do a lot of propagation work. So that's like mussels have a unique life cycle. I can't remember. Did you go over the mussel? You went over the mussel life cycle, right? So mussels have, are obligate parasites on fish, or in one case, a salamander. There's one mussel, the salamander mussel, that has a salamander host. But in order to raise up juvenile mussels, you need to either infect a fish or bypass that by doing in vitro fertilization of mussels, which both of which are done at the Ohio State University facility. I am not a propagation biologist, so Eva, my colleague who couldn't make it today, is, but I guess you were just wondering about like whether there is a similar program to the hellbenders. Yeah, a lot of states have this. Kentucky has one, and in Ohio, the state, like the officially sort of sanctioned state mussel hatchery, if you want to call it, is the Waters Aquatic Conservation Center at the Columbus Zoo.
And we do have the Center for Mollusk Conservation in Frankfort, Kentucky, and they are doing propagation on multiple species there, and they do releases pretty regularly. Also, they have done some work on some extremely rare mussels that we almost lost to extinction, that they've been able to do with that also. So yeah, look them up. They're pretty cool, and you can actually go and tour their facility and make an appointment there at the Center for Mollusk Conservation in Frankfurt if you are really interested. It's some really neat stuff.
Absolutely, it is incredible. So we have another question that came through. This is from DePaul Cristo Rey High School, and they have asked, how would you describe the health of the Ohio River?
I would say the health of the Ohio River is probably better than it has been in a very long time. So I also worked for an agency prior to SC1, which is the Ohio River Valley Water Sanitation Commission, which was actually started in 1948. So pre-Clear Water Act. So it's actually a commission of all the states in and around the Ohio River, and they help regulate things that go in and out. And they have seen a dramatic increase in the health of the Ohio River. Obviously, when it rains, when we don't have that riparian edge that Molly talked about, you can see the Ohio River get like chocolate milk and stuff. But there's what, 130 or so species of fish out there. There's lots of mussels. We've been here for a mussel talk, so learning about all the different species that all these different agencies are finding within the Ohio. So there's definitely an uptick in the Ohio River, and yes, I swim in it, so it's fine.
Things are on the mend, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And in large part due to the hard work of folks sitting right in front of you. So there's a lot of incredible work that's happening every day to ensure that that water quality continues to improve. So thank you, that was a great question. DePaul Cristo Rey High School. Does anyone else out there have any more questions for us? We invite you. We still have about 7 minutes, so there's still plenty of time to ask a question. Please raise your hand or put it in the chat, and we'll read it to the panel, or you're welcome to ask that directly of them. And while we wait, I'll ask my first question. This one's more of a career question. So high school students, if you're out there thinking about what your next step will be, this is a great chance to kind of dive into some of the more science track and ask questions of the panel who have some great experiences in science. But here, I'll ask this first one, and so you can respond, whoever'd like to can respond. Well, what is the best part of your job? And what is the hardest part of your job? Would anyone like to go first?
I'll go
Yep.
first. I really like my job just because I can go outside most of the time, even in the winter. I've always liked to go. I didn't start in my career as like specifically to water, because I've done all kinds of different things. But just the fact that I can go outside, and I also get to take students out, which is a really fun for all ages, to like help them rediscover being a kid and playing in the creek. So
Is there a hardest part?
hardest job, probably if maybe when you're like in chest waders, it's August and it's like 100% humidity. Sometimes that can be a little tough, but then you can just sit right in the water and it'll be fine.
I like that you have like, it's like a physical hardest part of the job. Most people are like,
really
yeah, it's like really stressful. It's like, no, it's a little bit sweaty sometimes.
That's fine. And then just jump in the water.
Yeah, so I have like kind of, I have two things that I like equally much, I would say. So I like that, you know, I don't have to worry that like what I'm doing is important or like good for the world. Like I feel like a lot of people have jobs where like they either don't know if they're making a difference, or like they know that they're doing things that are actively bad. Like, you know, you work for JP Morgan Chase, right, as like a bond trader. You're probably like, maybe this is maybe inappropriate to say to high schoolers, I don't know, but like being a banker is maybe not like the best thing to do with your life, right? I have a close friend who like just quit being the banker at JP Morgan Chase, like, and is doing something that he actually likes and is a lot happier now. But yeah, I like not having to worry about that. I like knowing that, you know, what I do is making a difference and like that it's, you know, it's good for the world. Like it's, you know, it's a weight off of my conscience. But I also like that, you know, as a sort of as a museum like based academic, like I have a lot of freedom in what I get to do and what I get to pursue. Like that's something that a lot of people don't have in their jobs. So like if I'm interested in something, like I'm interested in a species or, you know, I'm interested in like looking into some problem, by and large, I can just do it. I don't need to ask for anybody's permission. Like I can just look into it. I can like go out in the field and collect, etc. I think the worst part of the job is that with that sort of like power comes like the responsibility that you have to actually do stuff with that. And that, you know, it's kind of on me to make like, you know, like I work a lot more than I should, and I do because it's, you know, because I feel like the work is important, but it's easy to do too much. You know, it's easy to like sort of overextend myself because I'm worried that, you know, like if I don't do it, then nobody's going to do it and then it won't get done and then it'll be all my fault, you know, that sort of thing. But yeah.
Did we get another question? Or
No, if you want.
I wanted to make
respond
sure,
that,
yeah.
let's-
I was gonna say too, just, we maybe all work too much. Right, but
we like.
so, and just speaking to some people that were here at the conference today and realizing that is whenever, just finding something that you are passionate about is really important to work because otherwise you're not gonna wanna go. You're not gonna wanna go. So taking that time and also just keeping an open mind, like while you're at your, you know, for if you go to college, your first year of college, or if you're just out in the field working, keeping an open mind about what sparks your interest and that sort of thing, because you have to have that to keep going in any type of work related to that. And I mean, money is nice, don't get me wrong, but passion is important. But the best part about my job is like teaching people. And so actually educating people about impacts that are being made to their waters, what that means for them, helping them understand legislation, helping them understand what a permit like impact means in their area, and assisting them with being able to do something about that. It's to say something about that. And I would say that probably the worst part is just seeing environmental impacts being made for no reason except for like lack of education. So it seems like it's being done for industry to, you know, move us forward and all of that. But honestly, if folks would have just taken some time to think about the best way to do a project, we could have done that a whole lot better. And so we do continually see that just in the name of like moving forward economically, that we impact things that we really don't have to. We can actually have those projects, but also do it in a better way. So seeing those impacts is the worst.
I would say the most rewarding part of our jobs, probably all of our jobs, but mine in particular would be also being able to go outside and not being stuck at a computer all day inside. And also just feeling like you are making a difference. You know, even on the difficult days of working, I always leave feeling like this sense of reward, like I'm doing something to make a difference. And specifically with the Ohio River Foundation, all of our work revolves around water quality and improving the watershed, and water really touches everything on the planet. So I think that's something that we can all relate to. I would say the hardest thing about my job would be staying positive and not, you know, just not getting too down about the current situations and the state that everything is in. But for example, when we go out and remove honeysuckle all day and then you're feeling really good about it and you're driving home and you just see all of the honeysuckle everywhere along the highway. So I would say, yeah, just staying positive and really knowing that you are making a difference and that if we all work together, we can actually have a huge positive impact. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. These are all very inspiring. So we do have another question about mussels, which makes me really excited. So here is our question from Henry County High School, and this will probably be the last question of the day. But they have asked, they're wondering about the population of native mussels compared to invasives like zebra mussels. Is it getting better? And they're very interested in mussels.
I mean, when I've been in the creeks here in Northern Kentucky, I actually haven't seen a lot of zebra mussels, but I've seen a lot of Asian clams, but they're smaller, and I've seen lots of natives as well. So I don't know about other parts of the state though.
I mean, there has been research, right, that has shown, so zebra mussels came, down from the north and they came down into Kentucky and they were pretty strong. And then it kind of like receded, but still zebra mussels can be in your boat motor. Like make sure you're cleaning your boat motors if you go from an area that has zebra mussels, because apparently there's a lake now
There are a couple.
Williamstown,
spots, right?
Williamstown, yeah.
full of zebra mussels, and that really someone has transferred that, right? So, but as far as their persistence, I according to whatever happens with climate change, we don't know, but they're doing better. But I will say that there's a lot of areas in the Ohio and in the Mississippi that pretty much all of the substrate is just those dead zebra shells from when they were so prolific. There's still a problem. I wouldn't say it's probably one of our top problems here now currently, but Asian clams are all over the place and they're pretty persistent. And research goes back and forth on whether or not Asian clams are actually detrimental to native mussels. But sometimes you can find a stream and it's full of Asian clams, and then you'll find a stream that's full of natives, but then you'll also find both of them there. So just, and looking at that, maybe they could coexist. They're very different. But yeah, I think that that's a whole lot of, I didn't say a lot. There's not an answer. There's not an answer. There needs to be more research on that. Also, that they've just recently done even more research on the Asian clam and trying to figure out if that is really a problem for our native mussels or not. We don't know.
Yeah, I'm working on a project with a PhD student at the University of Cincinnati named Lilia Carton, and Wendell's also a collaborator on that, Wendell Haig, who's a federal mussel biologist. Yeah, it's looking at sort of the impact on growth that streams with corbicula, or that growing up in a stream with corbicula, the Asian clam, has on mussel growth, which it's not a clear story. It's actually very confusing.
It is.
But yeah, I would say like, at least in Ohio, zebra mussels are pretty rare. Like it's pretty uncommon to find them in streams or like, in big rivers, they're more common, like on the Ohio side of the Ohio River, right? Like you see zebras pretty frequently. In small, they don't tend to like smaller streams. Like they tend to get outcompeted by the native mussels in smaller streams. You really only see them downstream of impounded stream parts. Like there's a stream called Alum Creek in central Ohio, and in Columbus, in and outside of Columbus, that has a big dam. So it's like a reservoir basically, and downstream of the dam on Alum Creek, there are a lot more zebra mussels than I've ever seen anywhere else. Anywhere else in the state, but like Lake Erie is full of, it's absolutely chock full of zebra mussels. Asian clams, I think it really depends on the stream. There are a lot of streams where you find a lot of dead shells, and this is sort of similar to the situation that you mentioned for the Mississippi and some parts of the Ohio, where like the substrate is all, you know, is all the dead shells, but then you don't actually find a lot of live ones, which might suggest that, you know, they sort of had their population boom, they had their sort of 15 minutes, and now it's up and they're being outcompeted by the native stuff. I don't want to seem overly cheery about that. Like, I don't know if it's, you know, I don't know if you know, in a lot of streams, the native stuff is not doing great, but I definitely think that, like, it's not the sort of apocalypse, you know, the sort of mussel apocalypse that like people predicted, or at least if it was, it's not, not as much anymore. Yeah. Yeah, I think that Corbicula, like the interaction of Corbicula, it's kind of too early to say. Like, we still need to study it a lot. It seems like in a lot of cases, Corbicula is corollary, like it's something that's related to the stream being unhealthy in other ways, and so they survive when, you know, when native mussels can't.
That's great. That's such an informative response to that question, and a really good question. Well, thank you all so much. We are out of time. It is 1:50. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up for the day, but we couldn't be more grateful to our panelists. This meeting of the minds is really special. It's nice to have you all here. We thank you for your responses to the questions and giving us some of your time. And for all the students who've joined us and everyone else, thank you for celebrating World Water Day today with us at Thomas More Biology Field Station with their team and our team from Ohio River Foundation. We thank you very much. We hope you have a special World Water Day and you talk about this with people, your friends, peers, family members. Make sure and celebrate with them as well, and pass these messages and things, new things you've learned on to new people. So thank you very much. Connect with us. Here's Molly and I's contact information. Again, this recording will be shared with everyone. And we thank you very much. Happy World Water Day.
Bye.